Alright, before I get into the video, I want to say a few things. Thank you viewer for taking the time to look at my video, it means a lot. Also make sure to subscribe if you are new here. Karen/EP/EK goes schizo because her kid isn't allowed to climb into a stranger's £100,000 and car. Posted this on a comment section of another post but thought I'd share it in its entirety. On mobile, so please excuse any typos, less than perfect grammar/punctuation, and due to the time that has lapsed it may not be a word-for-word account. My father bought himself a brand new Bentley Continental back in '09 and one afternoon took my brother and I down to the coast to a restaurant his friend owned, where you can sit outside and look over the beach and more importantly keep an eye on his midlife crisis mobile. Within 15 or so minutes of sitting down we had this woman approach, probably late 30s with her kid, 10 at most and quite overweight. The following is the closest rendition of how the conversation went. EK, Mom. Look at that Bentley. EP, excuse me, is that yours? D, yeah EP, would it be alright if my son sat in it to have his photo taken? D, no, sorry. EP, that's not very fair, he's X years old and just wants to sit in your car. I can't believe you. D, well, believe it? The answer is no. Okay. EP, who do you think you are? It's a car? That's all, don't be so fucking tight. Conversation spiraled until my dad told her to fuck off. She then acted horrified despite swearing like a Marine for the last few minutes, and due to this threatened to call the police as my father swore in front of her child and then threatened to smash the fucking thing up. Probably not the best or longest story here, but the difference is this actually happened. Unlike the reams of far-fetched fiction written up by 14-year-olds that seems to clog up this subreddit. My entitled aunt thinks I should give my great-grandfather's ring to her son. My family has a lot of weird traditions that come into play here, so let me explain them. My family is filled with musicians, no one famous, and it started with my great-great-grandfather, who was an extremely skilled guitarist. He valued dedication and practice when learning music. He died when my great-grandfather, who ended up being a skilled trombone player, was about 16, and one of his final wishes was this: going through generations, the first person in a generation to consistently practice and perform with one instrument. This becomes important later. For 7 years, I don't know why he chose that time, was to receive his wedding ring. My family has kept this tradition for years. My great-grandfather, played trombone, got the ring at 23, and my grandfather, pianist, got it at 20. The generation above mine, my mom, EA, etc., includes no dedicated musicians, so my grandfather kept the ring for decades. I received a trumpet as a gift when I was 9. I'm 16 now, and 7 years after I played my first note, to the day I was given the ring. Here's where my entitled aunt gets involved. My cousin, EA's son, had been playing music longer than me, but he was not dedicated to a particular instrument. Because EA's husband is rich, he went through instruments constantly. He would buy an instrument, play it like 3 times a month for 6 months, and then ask his parents for a different kind. It was clear that he wasn't dedicated. When EA heard, she was furious. She called my grandfather and had a 3-hour-long argument with him, in which she called him crazy, selfish, etc. She called me and demanded I give it to her son. When I hung up, she drove to my house, but my mom stood up for me and demanded she leave. She hasn't talked to anyone since. This happened a week ago. I'm typing this on my phone at a restaurant, but when I get home, if I can remember, I'll attach a picture of the ring to this story. I know our traditions are weird, but that's just how we are. Edit, I guess this tradition isn't as weird as I thought and is a lot more common than I believed. Sorry. M yells at my friend for drinking because she looks too young. Where we live, restaurants have recently opened back up and me and a few of my friends decided to grab dinner together since we haven't seen each other for a while. Cast M entitled Mom PK Poor Kid SF Short Friend SFS Short Friend's younger sister Mimi M Manager. SF is one of my closest friends, and due to her height she often is mistaken for a young teenager even though she's 22. At the restaurant, SF ordered an alcoholic lemonade drink, and when the waiter brought it to her we hear a kid in the booth next to us say that he wants the same lemonade as SF. The waiter explained that he couldn't have it since it contained alcohol. M then looks over to see SF drinking it. M: but she's only a teenager, she shouldn't be drinking either. SF: actually I'm 22, I'm just short. M starts throwing a fit saying that SF is lying about her age, and SFS yells at her to shut the hell up and that her sister is older than she appears. M: how dare you cuss at me? Me: honestly I don't fucking blame her. This pisses M off and she attracts the attention of M. Ma'am, is there an issue here? M: yes, that girl over there is too young to drink. M walks over to us and asks to check SF ID. M: she's 22, she's old enough to drink, please leave these people alone. M starts ranting about how she's going to report us for allowing a minor to drink and that SF is going to jail for having a fake ID. SFS: all of these people are legally allowed to drink except me, she's 15 I think. After some more arguing, M and her kid leave and we ended up getting our meal free. EA moves her family away from us even though we didn't do anything. Long-time lurker on this subreddit, this is my first post so I apologize if there are formatting errors and such. I also apologize if some details are murky or unclear, as a good portion of this story was told to me by family and took place while I was very young, and I don't have all the details as the people involved have chosen to try and remove this crazy and odd part of their lives. Cast. Uncle equals my uncle, mom's side. CA equals crazy aunt. NA equals nice aunt. C1 and C2 equals my cousins and the offspring of uncle and CA, innocent bystanders. Some of these people come up later in the story and this is a bit long so I'll reintroduce as we go. Backstory. My uncle met a young woman in the late 90s early 2000s. She is the CA. According to my family, as I was just a baby at this time, she was fairly nice but quite hidden about herself. She didn't like to disclose information about herself that my uncle hadn't already told the family and was very quiet overall. At first, my family was like, no problem, she can tell us what she wants and if she doesn't want to say stuff it's fine. But it was still strange that certain details like where she studied, what she did for a living, etc. she never really told us unless my uncle convinced her that it was okay to tell my family. Overall, she was a bit of an odd character in the house. Whenever my uncle wasn't there, she would seem very uncomfortable with us despite the fact that my family always did their best to make her feel at home, including making her favorite foods, etc. My grandparents, aunt, and my parents tolerated her for a while out of respect for my uncle. Main story. In the mid-2000s, CA and my uncle had a baby who I'll call C1, cousin 1. We're pretty sure this when hell broke loose. I had been born at this point and I think CA just had a general distrust and or resentment for my family for no apparent reason. My sibling had been born shortly before C1 and I think CA did not appreciate that because I'm going through a lot of pain emotionally and physically, so I should be the one that's being taken care of. When C1 was born, she began to pity herself and she dragged the family along with it. She always helped herself to food and generally didn't care when food that had been made, for example, my aunt, was taken by her. My uncle did his best to try and console and put a stop to her, but he wasn't able to much as his job was very high demand and he wasn't home very often. There were very few cases that I saw her where she wasn't guilt-tripping my parents or asking them for this and that. A couple of years later, my second cousin, C2, was born. At this point, CA believed she'd had enough of us and our country. She moved to my home country shortly before meeting my uncle, and decided to move herself, my baby cousins, and my uncle back to her home country. And this wasn't a case of getting in the car and jumping back over the border. Her home city is a 3-hour flight from where I live. As you can expect, my family wasn't happy. This was mostly because my grandparents spent a lot of time and effort caring for C1 and C2 and my CA tried to treat them as unpaid babysitters. The key word is tried, as my grandparents are as tough as nails. Note that she was home most of the time. She just felt that the birth was way too exhausting on her and she needed some time to rest before caring for her kids. That time to rest was about a year and a half. So naturally, my family got worried over what would happen to her kids if she refused to take care of them. Her response was basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, "I'm moving back home to my family so that they can help me raise my kids right, unlike here." As you can expect, this did not sit well with my family. We consistently tried to get my uncle to do something and he decided that he couldn't really do anything to stop her. It was agreed that we would visit every so often to visit our cousins to check in and see how they were doing, and that was about it. The move happened and they left. My uncle still visited us pretty often. As it turns out, he didn't move back immediately with them. This was because his job, which financed CA's lazy lifestyle, required him to jump from city to city. He decided that once he had made enough money, he would take a slightly lower paying job in CA's home city and join CA and his kids there. This didn't fly with CA because I'm the wife and the mother of your kids, so you have to do what I say. I should point out here that my uncle is not a bad person. He is honestly one of the nicest people in the family who got caught in this situation. Throughout this story, he had been trying to keep both our family and CA on at least speaking terms so that he could retain connections to our family while saving his marriage and protecting his kids. Yes, he made mistakes, but he's done his best to make up for him, and honestly, he's the kind of person you can't stay mad at for too long. Several years pass and soon my family discovers that my uncle met another woman in CA's home city. We'll call her NA, nice aunt. She was much nicer and kind and she gave him a hand with all of his troubles. At this point, my uncle had moved out and was living in a separate home across the city from CA and her family. Apparently tension had been building up between CA and my uncle. I don't know exactly what, as he doesn't like to talk about it, and when CA found out that my uncle found another woman, she exploded. Apparently her years of pity partying herself and guilt-tripping my uncle didn't matter because you are bound to me for life because of our two kids. I gave birth to them, which was really hard, so you owe me for life. This time, however, my uncle had enough. I remember this well because I remember sitting at home one day when my aunt came over frantically looking for my mom because she needed my mom's help looking for the documents needed for a divorce. Side note, my uncle and CA got married in my country, but again, they now lived in CA's home country, so we helped out with the paperwork. My uncle and CA finally got divorced after roughly 10 years of craziness, but apparently she still holds a grudge against my family to this day. Again, we don't know why. After the divorce, things got better. My uncle married NA, who had been nothing but a joy around my family. The two of them recently had a baby who is very, very sweet. As for C1 and C2, we still hear from them as my uncle gets visitation. The two of them are very kind and nice, unlike their mother, and my family has been trying to get in contact with them more often. However, this is where CA re-enters the picture. Remember how I said we get to visit every so often? We still do that, but the two cousins are now at the age where they could visit us. So why do we always go there but they don't come to see us? Because CA won't let them. In her mind, she wants her kids to be raised in her home country and never leave. She's afraid that if she lets her kids come visit us, they'll never want to leave my home country because we'll brainwash them. As such, my siblings and mom made a visit down to see them several years ago. My dad and I had stuff to do, so we couldn't go, and were surprised to find out that not only was CA the oddball in our family, she's the oddball in her family too. When my siblings met CA's side of the family, they were nothing but kind and welcoming, which was odd based on CA's actions, but a welcome surprise. As for me, I went to go visit my cousins last Christmas to see how they were. I apologize if I sound old here. I was turning 17 at the time, but as soon as I saw them, I almost cried. This is because due to all the nasty thoughts CA had put into her own head about my family, the last time I had seen them in person was when they moved away 12 years ago. See main story paragraph 2. To end this story, my family doesn't talk about CA anymore. My uncle doesn't like to mention her and he wants us to accept NA and their daughter, which we do with open arms. They still live in CA's home city because NA is from there too, but we don't care too much. We still video chat with C1 and C2 on a regular basis and they seem to be doing well. They didn't seem to inherit any of CA's traits and they're happy that we still accept them as part of the family. On our part, we're happy that we can keep in touch and we hope that as they get older, they'll finally be able to leave the country and at least visit us as we have visited them. Sorry, this is sort of a long story and I kind of just needed a place to tell this story. I'm sorry if it doesn't all make sense, but if you made it this far, thanks for sticking around. I hope you are all doing well during the COVID era and hope you all have a good day, smiley face. Make sure to like, share, subscribe if you haven't done yet. Thanks for watching.